The stars were quiet that night when Captain Park Jin-ho received the signal. He was sitting in the command chair of his scout vessel, the horizon's edge, drinking cold coffee and watching the endless darkness of space through the main window. His ship was small, built for speed and exploration, not war. He had been mapping asteroid fields in the outer reaches of the Kepler system for 3 weeks. It was boring work, but Jin-ho did not mind. He liked the silence. Then the communication console screamed to life. The sound made him spill his coffee. Red lights flashed across the bridge as his crew rushed to their stations. Jin-ho grabbed the armrest of his chair and stared at the screen. The signal was broken, filled with static and noise, but he could hear voices underneath. Screaming voices. Crying voices. Then a single word, repeated over and over. Help. The signal came from New Busan. Jin-ho felt his blood turn cold. New Busan was humanity's greatest colony. Over 2 million people lived there. Farmers, teachers, children, families. His own sister lived there with her husband and their newborn daughter. He had visited them just 6 months ago and held his niece in his arms for the first time. Set course for New Busan, he ordered. His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking. Maximum speed. The journey took 4 hours. For hours of silence. For hours of trying to contact the colony and hearing nothing but static. 4 hours of praying to gods he did not believe in. When the horizon's edge finally arrived, Jin-ho wished he had never come. New Busan was gone. The beautiful green world he remembered was now a ball of fire and glass. The forests were ash. The oceans had boiled away. The cities, the farms, the schools, the hospitals, everything had been melted into the surface of the planet. Nothing remained but a smooth, glowing scar where millions of people had lived and laughed and loved. Jin-ho stared at the screen for a long time. He did not cry. He did not scream. He simply sat there, looking at the grave of his sister and her family, and felt something inside him break. "Sir," one of his crew members said quietly, "we are detecting a single life sign. Underground. Very faint." They found her in a research bunker buried deep beneath what had once been the capital city. Her name was Dr. Kong Sua, a scientist who studied alien life. She was covered in dust and blood, and her eyes were empty like windows into a dark room. Jin-ho knelt beside her and asked the question that burned in his throat. "What happened?" Sua looked at him. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Ships. Massive ships. They came from nowhere. They covered the sky like a black cloud. She paused and took a shaky breath. They had a symbol on their hulls. 3 circles connected by lines. I recognized it from our databases. The Valorian Dominion. Jin-ho had heard of the Valorians. Every human had. They were one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. They controlled hundreds of worlds and thousands of ships. When humanity first reached the stars, they had tried to contact the Valorians. The response had been cold and dismissive. Primitive mammals. Not worthy of our attention. Humans had accepted this. They had built their colonies far from Valorian space and minded their own business. They had done nothing wrong. They had threatened no one, and the Valorians had killed them anyway. The news reached Earth within hours. Jin-ho sent his report directly to the United Nations Space Council, along with video footage from his ship's sensors. The images spread across every screen on the planet. People watched in horror as their greatest colony burned. Parents held their children and cried. Old soldiers clenched their fists and remembered wars they had fought long ago. In the Great Council Chamber in Geneva, the leaders of humanity gathered. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, admirals, they all sat in silence as the footage played again and again. No one spoke. No one knew what to say. Then Admiral Tae Young-sik stood up. He was an old man with gray hair and a face carved from stone. He had served in the fleet for 50 years. He had seen things that would break most people. But even he had never seen anything like this. 2,300,000 people, he said. His voice was quiet but clear. That is how many lived on New Busan. Men, women, children. They were farmers and doctors and teachers. They were mothers and fathers and grandparents. They were our brothers and sisters. He paused and looked around the room. The Valorians did not attack a military base. They did not destroy a weapons factory. They burned a peaceful colony to glass because they could. Because they wanted to send a message. Because they believed we would do nothing. Admiral Tay walked to the center of the chamber. His boots echoed on the marble floor. "I've dedicated my life to peace," he continued. "I have always believed that war should be the last option. That talking is better than fighting. That understanding is better than hatred." He stopped and closed his eyes for a moment. But there are some things that cannot be forgiven. Some wounds that cannot be healed with words. He opened his eyes and looked directly at the camera, broadcasting his speech to every human in the galaxy. "They have made their choice. Now we make ours." The vote was unanimous. Every nation, every colony, every human agreed. There would be no negotiation, no diplomacy, no mercy. That night, the emergency broadcast went out across all human space. It was simple and short, just 3 words that would change the course of galactic history. Humanity declares war. In her hospital bed on the horizon's edge, Dr. Kong Sua heard the announcement. She thought of her colleagues who had died, her friends, the children who used to play outside her laboratory window. She thought of the Valorian ships blocking out the sun and the sound. Of the world ending, and for the first time since her rescue, she smiled. On Earth, Admiral Tae Young-sik stood alone in his office, looking at a photograph on his desk. It showed a young woman with bright eyes and a warm smile. His daughter. She had moved to New Busan 5 years ago to start a new life. The Admiral touched the photograph gently. "I will make them pay," he whispered into the darkness. "I promise you, I will make them pay." Far away in the heart of the galaxy, the Valorian Dominion celebrated their successful demonstration. They had shown the other species what happened to those who annoyed them. The primitive humans would probably scatter and hide now. Broken and afraid, they had no idea. What was coming? The galaxy thought it was a joke. When news of humanity's declaration of war spread through the stars, alien species across 1,000 worlds reacted with confusion and amusement. The Valorian Dominion had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had crushed rebellions, destroyed civilizations, and burned entire planets to dust. No one challenged them and survived. And now these humans, these small, soft creatures who had barely learned to travel between stars, were declaring war. The Supreme Chancellor of the Valorian Dominion found it so funny that he decided to broadcast a response to the entire galaxy. His image appeared on screens from one end of known space to the other. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and eyes that glowed like cold stars. When he spoke, his voice dripped with contempt. "The insects threaten the storm," he said, his thin lips curling into a smile. "How amusing. These humans believe they can fight us. They believe their tiny ships and primitive weapons can stand against the might of the Dominion." He laughed, a cold sound like breaking glass. "We will send a fleet to their homeworld. We will turn their Earth to ash, just as we did their colony. And then we will forget they ever existed." The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, other species watched in silence. Some felt pity for the humans. Others felt nothing at all. No one expected humanity to survive, but Ambassador Yunhana refused to give up. She was Earth's representative to the Galactic Assembly, a gathering of diplomats from hundreds of species. For years, she had worked to build relationships with other civilizations. She had smiled at insults, ignored disrespect, and fought for humanity's place in the galaxy. Now she stood before the Assembly and demanded justice. "The Valorian Dominion has committed genocide," she said. Her voice was steady and strong. "They murdered over 2 million innocent people. Children burned alive. Families destroyed. This is not politics. This is not strategy. This is evil." The assembly chamber was silent. Hundreds of alien faces looked at her, but none of them spoke. Hannah could see the fear in their eyes. They were afraid of the Valorians. They had been afraid for thousands of years. "We ask the Assembly to condemn this attack," Hannah continued. "We ask you to stand with us against tyranny. We ask you to remember that today, it is humans who burn. Tomorrow, it could be any of you." Still no one spoke. Then a delegate from a small trading species approached her privately after the session ended. He was a short creature with 4 arms and sad eyes. "Gosh, I am sorry for your loss," he said quietly. "But you must understand, no one will help you. No one can. The Valorians are too powerful." He looked around nervously. "Your kind will be extinct within a solar cycle. If you are wise, you will run while you can." Anna looked at him for a long moment. "We are not going to run," she said. "We are going to fight. And when we win, you will wish you had stood with us." The delegate shook his head sadly and walked away. He thought she was deluded. He thought she was already dead. He was wrong. While Ambassador Hannah fought her political battle, Lieutenant Beek Minji was fighting a secret war. She was an intelligence officer, trained to blend into any environment and gather information without being noticed. For the past 2 years, she had been embedded in neutral alien territory, building networks of informants and stealing secrets. Now she had discovered something important. The attack on New Busan was not random. The Valorians had destroyed the colony as a demonstration, a warning to other species, who were considering trading with humans. Humanity had been growing too fast, making too many friends. The Dominion had decided to crush them before they became a threat. This information was valuable. But Mingi had found something even more important. Hidden in stolen Valorian databases was their genetic code, the blueprint of their biology. And buried within that code was a weakness, a tiny flaw that could be exploited. Mingi sent her findings to Earth immediately. Dr. Kong Su, the survivor of New Busan, received the data and began to study it. What she found made her hands tremble, but the humans' greatest secret was still hidden, deep in the asteroid belt beyond Mars. In shipyards carved into the hearts of massive rocks, humanity had been building something for decades. It was called Project Prometheus, and fewer than 100 people in the entire species knew it existed. Fleet Commander? No. Seo-chin was one of them. Seo Kajin was a quiet man with a brilliant mind. 20 years ago, a crashed alien probe had been discovered on one of Jupiter's moons. It contained technology far beyond anything humans had ever seen. The United Nations had decided to keep it secret and use it too. Build weapons that might one day be needed. That day had come. "Show me," Admiral Tae Young-sik said when he arrived at the hidden shipyard. Seo Kajin led him to a massive window looking out into the asteroid's hollow interior. What the Admiral saw made him stop breathing. Ships, dozens of warships, each one sleek and deadly. They were unlike anything humanity had ever built. Their engines burned with alien fire. Their weapons hummed with power that could crack moons. Their armor was made from materials that did not exist on Earth. 37 Prometheus-class battleships, Seo Kin said. 200 support vessels. 1,500 fighter craft. He paused. They are faster, stronger, and more advanced than anything the Valorians have. Admiral Tae stared at the fleet in silence. Then he asked the only question that mattered. "Are they ready?" "They have been ready for 5 years," Seogin replied. "We were waiting for the right moment." The Admiral nodded slowly. "The moment has come." 3 weeks later, the Valorian punishment fleet entered the Sol system. 200 warships, each one larger than anything humans had ever built. Their commander was confident. This would be an execution, not a battle. The humans would probably surrender the moment they saw his fleet. He was still thinking about how he would accept their surrender. When the first Prometheus ships appeared from behind Jupiter's moons, the Valorian commander stared at his sensors in disbelief. Those readings could not be correct. Those ships could not be real. No primitive species could build vessels like that. On the bridge of the flagship Retribution, Admiral Tae Young-sik opened a channel to his fleet. "All ships," he said calmly, "begin attack." The Battle of Sol had begun, and the galaxy was about to learn that humanity was not prey. Humanity was the hunter, the Valorian commanders. Name was Lord Veth. He had destroyed 12 civilizations in his long career. He had burned worlds and crushed fleets and watched entire species beg for mercy. He was feared across the galaxy. Now, for the first time in his life, he felt afraid. The human ships moved like nothing he had ever seen. They did not fly in neat formations like proper warships. They scattered and regrouped, attacked and retreated, peering from impossible angles and vanishing before his weapons could lock on. Their engines were faster than anything in the Valorian fleet. Their weapons punched through shields that should have held for hours. How is this possible? Lord Veth demanded. They are primitives. They should not have technology like this. No one on his bridge had an answer. On the human flagship Retribution, Admiral Tae Yong-sik watched the battle unfold with cold satisfaction. His crew worked in perfect silence, each person focused on their task. Every order was followed instantly. Every weapon fired with deadly precision. Enemy flagship identified, his weapons officer reported. Coordinates locked, hold fire, the Admiral said. Let them feel fear first. Let them understand what is coming. The Valorians had expected terrified primitives. Instead, they found warriors who fought with terrible fury. Every human pilot, every gunner, every engineer, they all remembered New Busan. They remembered the images of children's toys melted into glass. They remembered the screams in that final distress signal. And they poured that memory into every shot, every missile, every desperate charge. Pilot Choi Era led the 77th Strike Squadron through the heart of the battle. Her call sign was Ghost, and she had earned it. Her fighter moved so fast that enemy sensors often lost track of her completely. She appeared, killed, and vanished like a spirit of vengeance. Ghost Squadron, form up on me, she ordered through her radio. We are going for the command ship. That is suicide, one of her pilots replied. Their shields are still at full power. Then we will go through those shields, Era said. Her voice was calm, almost peaceful. My daughter was on New Busan. She was 7 years old. She was afraid of the dark, so I gave her a nightlight shaped like a star. Hey. She paused. Follow me or do not follow me. I am going. Every pilot in her squadron followed. The attack run was insane. Enemy fire filled the space around them like a storm of light. Ara watched her squadron mates die one by one, their ships exploding into brief flowers of flame. She did not slow down. She did not turn back. She flew straight at the enemy flagship with her finger on the trigger. For New Busan, she whispered, her ship hit the enemy shields at full speed. The impact should have destroyed her instantly. But at the last moment, her weapons fired a special payload designed by Chief Engineer Moon Dae-ho. It was not a bomb. It was a virus, encoded into an electromagnetic pulse. It slipped through the shields like water through fingers and infected the flagship's computer systems. Era's ship bounced off the shields and spun away, broken and burning. She was badly wounded, bleeding from a dozen cuts, her left arm hanging useless at her side. But she was alive, and she watched with fierce joy as the enemy flagship's lights began to flicker and die. Their command ship is disabled, the tactical officer on Retribution reported. Their fleet coordination is failing. Admiral Tae nodded. Commander No, activate the secondary weapons. Far away, on asteroids scattered throughout the solar system, hidden weapons platforms came online. These had been placed decades ago, disguised as mining equipment and communication relays. Chief Engineer Moon Dae-ho had designed them personally. Working in secret for 20 years, now they awakened hundreds of missiles. Launched simultaneously from positions the Valorians had never suspected. They came from every direction from the asteroid belt, from the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, from hidden bases on distant rocks. The Valorians had no time to react. Their ships exploded by the dozens. Lord Veth watched his fleet die around him. His flagship was dark and powerless, drifting through space like a corpse. His crew scrambled to restore systems, but the human virus was spreading faster than they could contain it. Possible, he whispered. This is impossible. On the Retribution, Admiral Tay opened a communication channel to the entire battlefield. Valorian Fleet. This is Admiral Tay Young-sik of the United Human Fleet. Your command ship is disabled. Your fleet is broken. You came here expecting to destroy a primitive species. You were wrong. Paused and looked at the screen, showing the burning remains of enemy ships. We did not start this war. You did when you murdered millions of innocent people. You thought we would run? You thought we would hide? You thought we would beg for mercy? His voice hardened. We are humans. We do not beg. We do not forget. And we do not forgive. The battle lasted 3 more hours. When it ended, 197 Valorian ships had been destroyed. Only 3 managed to escape, jumping to faster than light speed and fleeing toward their home space. The human fleet had lost ships too. Good people had died. Pilot Choi Era was in critical condition, fighting for her life in a medical bay. Many others would never return home, but they had one. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Valorian Dominion had lost a battle. Admiral Tay broadcast a message across all galactic frequencies. It was short and simple, but every species in the galaxy heard it. We're not prey. We are the hunters, and we are coming. On a distant world, a slave species that had served the Valorians for centuries heard the broadcast. They looked at each other with something they had not felt in generations: hope. On the Galactic Assembly Station, Ambassador Yunhana watched the alien delegates react to the news. Their faces showed shock, disbelief, and fear, but not fear of the Valorians. Fear of the humans. Good, Hannah thought. Let them fear us. Fear is the beginning of respect, and in the ruins of the enemy flagship, Lord Veth sat in darkness and thought about what he had seen. The humans had not just defeated him, they had humiliated him. They had shown that the Dominion was in. Ought invincible. He knew with terrible certainty that this war was only beginning, and he knew for the first time in his long life that his people might actually lose. The war spread like fire across the stars. After the Battle of Seoul, humanity did not wait for the Valorians to recover. Admiral Tay Young-sik understood that their advantage was surprise. The enemy had thought humans were weak. Now they knew better. But if humanity gave them time to prepare, time to build new weapons and new strategies, that advantage would disappear. So the human fleet moved forward. They struck Valorian military bases across 4 star systems in a single week. Shipyards burned. Weapons factories collapsed. Supply lines were cut. The Dominion had never faced an enemy that attacked so fast, so hard, from so many directions at once. General Shin Young-ji led the ground forces. She was a small woman with quiet eyes and a mind like a razor. Before the war, she had trained soldiers in mountain warfare on Earth. Now she trained them to fight on alien worlds with strange gravity and poisonous air. Her first major operation was the liberation of a slave world called Theron 4. The planet had been conquered by the Valorians 3,000 years ago. The native species, small gentle beings with gray skin and large eyes, had served as workers and servants ever since. They had forgotten what freedom felt like. They had forgotten that freedom was even possible. Then the humans came. Yoonji's forces landed in the middle of the night. They moved through the darkness like shadows, taking out guard posts and disabling security systems. By dawn, every Valorian soldier on the planet was dead or captured. The natives came out of their homes slowly, afraid to believe what they were seeing. Yoonji stood in the central square of their largest city and spoke through a translator. "You are free," she said simply. "The Valorians no longer rule here. You can choose your own leaders, make your own laws, live your own lives." She paused. "We ask nothing in return. We are not here to conquer. We are here to end tyranny." An old native approached her with tears running down his wrinkled face. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you do this for us? You do not know us. We have nothing to offer you." Yoonji thought about the question for a long moment. Then she answered, "Because someone did this to our people too. They killed millions of us because they could. Because they wanted to teach us that we were nothing. Her voice was soft, but firm. We will not become what we fight against. We will not rule through fear. If we are going to build a new galaxy, it will be built on freedom, not slavery. The old native fell to his knees and wept. News of Theron 4 spread quickly. Other slave species heard that there was a new power in the galaxy of species that fought against the Valorians and freed their victims. Hope began to grow in hearts that had known only despair. Ambassador Yoon Hana worked tirelessly to build on this hope. In secret meetings on neutral stations, she met with representatives of 12 different species. They were all afraid the Valorians had spies everywhere, but they were also desperate. "We have waited 10,000 years for someone to stand against the Dominion," one delegate whispered. "We never believed it would happen. We had given up." "Do not give up now," Hannah replied. "Help us, and we will help you. Give us information. Give us hiding places. Give us resources. And when the war is over, you will have your freedom." The Liberation Coalition was born that night. 12 species, each one contributing what they could. Intelligence reports flowed to human commanders. Safe harbors were established in hidden corners of the galaxy. Supplies appeared at crucial moments. The Valorians noticed their enemies growing stronger, but they could not understand how. Their spies reported nothing. Their sensors detected nothing. They did not realize that the very species they had oppressed for millennia were now working against them. But the Dominion was not finished. In desperation, they activated their most terrible weapon, a planet killer. It was a massive ship, larger than a moon, capable of destroying an entire world with a single shot. They aimed it at Earth. Sergeant First Class Yuan Hojen learned of the plan through Coalition intelligence. He was a Special Forces commander, trained for impossible missions. His team was small, lonely 15 soldiers, but they were the best humanity had. "The weapon will reach firing range in 6 days," he told Admiral Tay. "We do not stop it. Earth will die." The Admiral looked at him with tired eyes. "Can you do it?" "I do not know," Hojan admitted. "But I will try." His team launched in a stealth ship designed to avoid detection. They flew for 4 days, hiding in asteroid fields and behind moons, always moving closer to the planet killer. When they finally reached it, they had only 12 hours left. The infiltration was brutal. They fought through corridors filled with enemy soldiers. They lost 8 people in the first hour. Hojun took a wound to his leg but kept moving. He had no choice. Finally, they reached the main reactor. Hojen planted the explosives himself, while his remaining soldiers held the door against waves of enemies. "Charge is set," he reported through his radio. "Detonation in 5 minutes." "What about extraction?" Admiral Tay asked. Hojen looked at his wounded team. "At the enemies surrounding them, at the doors that were already buckling under assault, there will be no extraction," he said calmly. "Tell my wife I love her. Tell my son to be strong." The connection cut. 5 minutes later, the planet killer exploded. The blast was visible from nearby systems, a new star that burned briefly and then died. Earth was saved. On the Retribution, Admiral Tae Young-sik stood in silence for a long time. Then he called Dr. Kong Sue to his office. She came with a small case in her hands. Inside was a vial of clear liquid, the weapon she had been developing from the Valorian genetic data. A plague that would make their entire species sterile within a generation. A death sentence for billions of beings. "Is it ready?" the Admiral asked.
Yes.
Ua whispered. Her hands were shaking. "But Admiral, if we use this, we become the monsters. We become what they are." Tay looked at the vial for a long moment. He thought about New Busan. He thought about his daughter. He thought about Hojen and his team, sacrificing themselves to save Earth. "We will not use it unless we must," he said finally. "But we will give them a choice. Surrender or face extinction." He took the case from her hands. "And we will see what kind of species they truly are." The final battle was coming, and humanity would decide the fate of the galaxy. The Valorian homeworld had never been touched by war for 10,000 years. It had been protected by the greatest fleet in the galaxy. Enemies were crushed before they could even dream of approaching it. The pale blue planet, with its silver cities and crystal towers, had become a symbol of power that seemed eternal now. Human ships surrounded it like a ring of fire. Admiral Tay. Yang Sik stood on the bridge of the Retribution and looked at the planet below. Beside him stood Ambassador Yunhana, General Shin Yunji, and Dr. Kong Sua. Pilot Choi Era, recovered from her wounds, had insisted on being present as well. She stood with a cane, her left arm still in a sling. But her eyes were burning with fierce pride. The Coalition fleet stretched behind them, ships from 13 different species, all united against the Dominion. It was the largest fleet in galactic history, and at its head were the humans who had made it possible. "Open a channel," Admiral Tay ordered. The Supreme Chancellor's face appeared on the screen. He looked older now, tired. The war had not been kind to him, but his eyes still held the same cold arrogance. "Admiral Tay," he said, "you have fought well, better than we expected. But surely you must see that this is the end. We have 500 ships defending our homeworld. You cannot win." "I did not come here to win," the Admiral replied. "I came here to give you a choice." "A choice?" The Chancellor laughed, but it sounded hollow. "What choice could you possibly offer?" Admiral Tay stepped forward. "Unconditional surrender. Your military will be dismantled. Your leaders will face trial for the murder of New Busan. Your slave worlds will be freed. Your species will be limited to your home system until you have proven you can live peacefully with others." The Chancellor's face twisted with anger. "You dare to dictate terms to us? We are the Valorian Dominion. We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. Your rule is over," Tay said calmly. "Accept it, and your people will survive. Refuse, and they will not. You are bluffing. You do not have the power to destroy us." Admiral Tay nodded to Dr. Kong Su. She stepped forward and began to speak. "6 months ago, I discovered a flaw in Valorian genetics. A small weakness, invisible to your doctors, but fatal when triggered." She held up a vial of clear liquid. "This contains a plague designed specifically for your species. It will spread through air, water, and contact. Within 3 generations, every Valorian will be sterile. Your species will die slowly, watching your children fail to have children of their own." The Chancellor's face went pale. "You would not. You call us monsters who would become worse than us." "Yes," Sua said quietly. "We would. That is why we are giving you this choice. Surrender now, and we will destroy this weapon. We will show mercy that you never showed us. We will prove that we are not what you tried to make us." She paused and her voice hardened. "But if you refuse, if you choose pride over survival, then we will use it. And when the last Valorian child dies of old age, alone and without hope, remember that you could have stopped it. Remember that we offered peace, and you chose extinction." The Chancellor stared at them with something new in his eyes, fear. "You have 1 hour," Admiral Tay said. "Use it wisely." The channel closed. The hour passed slowly. On the human ships, soldiers waited in silence. On the Coalition vessels, freed slaves prayed to gods they had nearly forgotten. On the Valorian homeworld, chaos erupted as military commanders argued with government officials. 58 minutes after the ultimatum was delivered, the Supreme Chancellor was removed from power by his own generals. They understood what he did not. The humans were not bluffing. They would do what they promised, and no amount of pride was worth the death of their entire species. The new Valorian leader of military, commander named Lord Kareth, appeared on screen with surrender documents already. "Signed, we accept your terms," he said stiffly. "We will submit to trials. We will free our slaves. We will disarm our fleet." He paused, and for a moment, something like genuine emotion crossed his face. "I was not part of the decision to attack your colony. But I am part of my people, and my people are guilty. We accept the consequences." Admiral Tay nodded slowly. "Then we accept your surrender, and we will honor our word." He turned to Dr. Kong Sua. "Destroy the weapon." Sua looked at the vial in her hand, the power to end an entire civilization. Then she walked to the airlock, placed it inside, and pressed the release. The vial floated into space and disappeared into the darkness. "It is done," she said quietly. "We are not them." The war was over. In the months that followed, the galaxy transformed. The Valorian Dominion was dismantled, its military scattered, its leaders tried for their crimes. Slave worlds were freed one by one. Species that had known only suffering began to build new lives. The Galactic Assembly was reformed with humanity holding a permanent seat at the head table. Not because they had conquered the most, but because they had freed the most. Because when they had the power to commit genocide, they chose mercy instead. Ambassador Yunhana gave the opening speech at the first session of the new assembly. "We did not seek this war," she said. "We did not want this blood on our hands. We were a young species, just learning to walk among the stars. We wanted only to explore, to trade, to make friends." She paused and looked around the chamber at hundreds of species who now looked at humans with respect and gratitude. "But when darkness came for us, we did not kneel. We stood, we fought, and we will stand with any species that chooses to do the same. That is our promise. That is our oath. That is what it means to be human." The chamber erupted in applause. 1 year after the war ended, Dr. Kung Sua returned to New Busan. The planet was still scarred, still healing. Terraforming machines worked day and night to restore what had been lost. Where cities had once stood, new structures were slowly rising. Sua walked to the spot where the capital had been. A memorial stood there, now a wall of names stretching for kilometers, each one carved in stone. She found the names of her friends, her colleagues, the children who had played outside her window. She knelt in the soft earth and planted seed she had brought from Earth, a cherry blossom tree. In spring, it would bloom with pink flowers, a symbol of beauty and renewal. "I kept my promise," she whispered to the names on the wall. "We made them pay, but we did not become them. We stayed human." A gentle wind blew across the empty land, and Sua felt, for the first time in years, something like peace, far above. Ships from a dozen species passed through the system. They dipped their lights in respect as they flew over New Bazina. Grave that had become a symbol of hope, the galaxy had called humanity. Primitive, fragile, insignificant. They learned too late that humans were none of these. Humans were patient. Humans were furious. And humans never, ever forgot.